Hi, welcome to Promo Insiders, an ASI media podcast that covers the issues that matter most to the promotional products industry. I'm Chris Ruvo for ASI. Today's topic is of the utmost importance to promo, the economy. And we could hardly have a better expert to discuss the state of the turbulent marketplace than my guest. Dr. Mary Kelly is an internationally renowned economist, U.S. Navy veteran, and the CEO of Productive Leaders, a firm dedicated to leadership and economic development. Mary's talk on the economy at the 2024 ASI Power Summit was a hit with attendees. So much so, in fact, that she'll be speaking again at the 2025 ASI Power Summit being held October 12th through October 14th at the Omni Scottsdale Resort and Spa at Monte Lucia in Scottsdale, Arizona. Today, we'll be talking everything from where the economy is and where it's going to tariffs, trade war, and how promo business leaders can bulwark their businesses and navigate the uncertain times. Mary, thank you for joining me today.
Chris, it's so great to see you, and the chance to get some information to all of our ASI folks is just so important right now.
All right, perfect. Well, thank you. Thank you again. So let's do that then. Let's jump into this first question. What is the current state of the economy? It seems like so much is in flux. Have we entered a recession? Are we heading toward one? What's your reading on things?
Okay. So first things first, as we are recording this, it is almost April of 2025, and we are absolutely not in a recession. 100% no. So a few things. If you look at the news right now, everything looks very, very negative. If you watch the news, it is filled with bad news, and we're going to talk about the things that they're harping on. However, we are absolutely not in a recession. A recession is technically defined as two negative quarters of GDP that's falling. We are nowhere close to that. In fact, we just got our fourth quarter numbers that were, they come out and then they're verified. And fourth quarter of US growth was up. Third quarter was up. So we've had a pretty good 2024. We had an okay 2023. So we are absolutely not in a recession. Now, the big question is, are we heading for one? That's what's on everybody's mind. And the issue there again is no. Here's why.
Okay.
The inflation numbers that people are looking at right now. And so again, this information is fungible, which means it is only good until tomorrow or until the new numbers come out.
Sure.
But a few things that the ASI folks seemed very interested in back in October, and they will probably, so we're just updating some of those things, just a few things. Our CPI, our Consumer Price Index, is at 2.8%. That's good news. That is a good, solid number. We would like that to be around 2.4, according to the Federal Reserve. So that's okay. Our core inflation. Now, remember, inflation only measures the last 12 months. The big inflation problems we have in America happened in 2021, 22, and a little bit in 2023. That's when our inflation was really a little bit out of control. So just for perspective's sake, back in July of 2022 is when we had the highest inflation that most of us can remember at above 9%. But the highest inflation in the United States, like ever, was back in June of 1920, and that was at 23.7%.
All right, so
and that's the highest we've ever had. So 9 is not good, 23% bad. But keep in mind, when you look at the rest of the world, we're pretty much on par with our inflation. And so just for our inflation folks and the people who like numbers, you might like this. If you hate numbers, grab a coffee. Everything's fine.
Tune out.
So our food was up by 2.6%. Our energy costs actually went down, and that is including what's going on with Canada and the fact that Canada provides energy to about 1.5 million Americans in Michigan, Minnesota, all that. Shelter costs only went up by 0.3%. Now, these are all February 2025 numbers. March, of course, is not yet. Gasoline went down by a percentage. So certain things have come down. Certain other things like food is pretty stabilized. Now, this doesn't help you if you go to the grocery store and the things you buy all the time, you're thinking, wait, this box of fill in the blank should cost $4.99 and it's up to $7.99. That doesn't make you feel better for the things you buy often. But when we look at the last 12 months, the numbers are surprisingly good. Now, keep in mind, China has the opposite problem that we
Okay.
have.
Hmm.
China has a negative inflation right now. Down, they're down a negative 0.7% so
Hmm.
far in February of this year.
Is
Their
that right?
core,
Okay.
yeah, their core inflation for 2024 in December was only up by 0.4%. So their costs have decreased. Our costs have increased. We have opposite problems with China. And
Okay.
a lot of people, focus on China. And I do want to talk about that. But we are absolutely not in a recession. We don't
Okay.
look like we're going into a recession, even with all the talk of inflation from tariffs.
Okay. Really, really good to know. And just even beyond the inflation question, it seems like jobs, not booming, but we're still continuing to add jobs. The unemployment rate hasn't gone through the roof or anything like that. It does seem like business is still churning. So good to know. That said, where are we going? Like,
Right.
how do you kind of see things playing out the rest of the year?
Right. So you mentioned the job, so I want to address that again with facts, not emotions.
Hmm.
When people look around and they see, oh, my college kid who graduated last May still hasn't found the job of their dreams,
Hmm.
or we look at these government layoffs, are we in a bad labor market? And
Hmm.
again, the answer is not according to the numbers. The
Okay.
jobless claims that just came out 2 days ago reflect that recurring claims of joblessness, so people who are claiming
Hmm.
unemployment on a recurring basis,
Okay.
dropped by 25,000. Now, we only dropped by jobless claims of 1,000, so more people have
Hmm.
now applied for things, but we're pretty solid at 224,000 jobless claims.
Okay.
And what that means is we're in a pretty robust labor market. People
Okay.
always ask, well, how's the hiring? How's the firing? Well, some people are definitely changing jobs. Some people are definitely moving people in and out of other jobs.
Hmm.
And the government situation, what they've done in order to reduce the federal workload, and I don't know if I may have said this in front of some of your folks at
Hmm.
the happy hour, but I was a federal worker technically for 35 years. I
Right.
did 25 years on active duty,
Hmm.
10 years as a contractor,
Hmm.
not a GS worker, a CS worker.
Hmm.
And so I would joke that when the government told people, okay, COVID happened, go home and work from home, at least half of that statement was true.
Okay.
Because there were a lot of people who just weren't working. And that's
Right.
in the corporate world, that's in the government world. I was talking to a young lady, and she's been working at home for the past 4 years. She's in her 30s. And she says she only works about 4 hours a week. I'm like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah,
And she said,
geez.
"Well, my manager seems to think I'm doing a good job." I said, "But you're not." And she
Right.
said, "No, I'm not." I said, "But you know that." She says, "I do know that." I said,
Yeah.
"Then what are you doing? This is bad for your self-respect." She goes, "But nobody seems to mind. Nobody seems to care."
Okay.
I'm like, see, that's an accountability factor.
Right. Sure.
So we need to be paying attention to that. And then back to our economy. When people look at the labor market,
Hmm.
you've still got people to hire, you've still got people to fire. That's going to be okay. Don't be afraid to fire people who aren't performing.
Okay.
I would say make sure that you're holding people accountable, doing the right thing. But if people aren't doing their job, it may be time for them to go. When
Hmm.
we look at the other data points,
Hmm.
the stock market is the other place where people are concerned. You
Hmm.
look at your 401k, your SEP, your IRA, your investments,
Right.
and you're sad. You're sad.
Right.
Now remember, in 2022, the market just tumbled.
Right. It
The S&P
disappeared
500,
practically. Yeah.
it was terrible. It went
Yeah.
down. The S&P 500, which is supposed to be our steady Eddie,
Hmm.
went down by about 20%, 19.44%. And then nothing happened in the market until the end of 2023. And that's when the miracle of AI showed up and everybody got excited. And the Magnificent Seven carried us all like a big wave into a great ending of 2023 and 2024. And we're still riding that kind of unrealistic wave. But
Hmm.
now people are having to pay attention to, how is AI actually helping my business?
Hmm.
And Forbes came out with a great survey, and most people are not using AI nearly to its capacity.
Okay.
Most people are just fumbling through, maybe using it to write some emails, maybe you use it to write the questions for today's podcast. That would be a really good use of AI. That would
Right.
be great.
Yeah.
So, are we using AI to its full potential? The answer is no. Are people being replaced by AI? Not really in numbers yet. Some marketing, some things where people say, "Oh, we actually don't need somebody to sit around and write copy all the time." So
Mm-hmm.
that's some efficiencies, but are companies using AI to its full potential yet? Not even close.
Mm-hmm.
So then the big issues, of course, is the trade and the
Mm-hmm.
tariffs.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and let's get into that a little bit. Like, do you see that how do you see that impacting the economy, if at all, through this year?
Right. So remember, in you have to go back with trade, and it's very easy to get alarmist over
Mm-hmm.
trade and tariffs. People say, wait a second, a 25% tax on everything we buy from China. Don't we buy everything from China?
Mm-hmm.
No, we don't. Our
Mm-hmm.
largest trading partner, of course, our partners are Canada and Mexico, and they flip-flop depending upon the month.
Mm-hmm.
And then number three is China. And
Mm-hmm.
when you think about what we do with Canada and Mexico, we have to go backwards. And the reason for that is because you can't understand what's happening now until you go back to President Trump's first term in office, which
Okay.
was the USMCA, which is
Right.
yeah, that's the only way to remember it for me in my head. So the US Mexico Canadian
Right.
Agreement,
Sure.
Tariffs and Trades, which put free trade in North America. That's the idea. But with that came some stipulations that certain other requirements were supposed to be met. And that is what President Trump, I think, is probably focusing on now, but that is certainly not what gets the focus.
Mm-hmm.
So, very recently, President Trump just said we're going to slap a 25% tariff on all vehicles coming into the United
Right.
States that are not made in the United States. So, you have to go, wait, hang on. When the USMCA happened, it was about cows and cars. That's again, this is my simple Mary brain trying to keep
Okay.
all this straight.
Sure.
With Canada, it was very much about dairy products,
Mm-hmm.
milk, yogurt, cheese, butter, all that stuff, cows, because they consolidate a lot of their dairy production and then they keep close restrictions on that. And then for United States products going into Canada, after a certain number, so certain
Mm-hmm.
quantity, then they get taxed. So that's the cows part with Canada. It was cars with Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
And back then, the idea was Mexican auto workers needed to be paid at least like $16 or $17 an hour
Mm-hmm.
in order to be a little bit more competitive with US automakers in terms of labor costs in the United States. So there was that. Now, some of those things have fallen by the wayside. And
Okay.
keep in mind, if you bring in a car from Germany, we only tax it at like 2 or 3%. And when you bring a car from the United States to Germany, it gets taxed at, 10 or 20%.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I think that first off, the people who assign tariff rates, here's how they did this. They all got together at a bar, said, let's drink everything behind the bar, and then let's randomly assign numbers. For
Right.
example, a Barbie doll is a doll, so that's taxed at 26%, but a Ken doll, that's an action figure taxed at 7%. What? Like these things just make no sense at
This
all.
is real, huh? That's a real thing. Yeah.
It's a real thing. So when
Wow.
you think about these things and you look at the thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of pages that are tariff rates that are
Mm-hmm.
changing all the time, and it's actually hard to find them. When you
Mm-hmm.
say, how much, for example, is it to bring in a ceramic cup from Argentina? And is it different than bringing it in from China or India or someplace else? By the way, Argentina's inflation rate right now, 66%.
Yeah, we don't want to be there.
66
Yeah.
in for this month, and it's down from 84%. Russia's inflation rate, 10% right now, and we're pretty sure that the Russians are lying about how bad their economy actually is. Germany, the rest of the European Union, the Eurozone, right around 2.3%. So when we talk about the United States and the European area, those inflation rates are pretty close.
Mm-hmm.
So let's get back to the trade and the tariffs.
Mm-hmm.
So you go back to the USMCA and you say, okay, shouldn't we have free trade in North America? The answer is yes. And full disclosure, I am a free trade capitalist. I
Sure.
like the idea of zero tariffs. I realize that does not make me popular with some people.
Yeah.
I don't like taxes on imported goods regardless. That's what a tariff is. It's a tax on an imported good.
Mm-hmm.
But the whole purpose of this new iteration supposedly is to get the Mexican government to make sure that they are doing their part with border security, and the same with Canadians.
Mm-hmm.
regardless of whether or not that's the real motivation, whether or not this is leverage, which I suspect it's more leverage than anything else. But you still got to go back to President Trump's first term. In
Hmm.
his first term, he proposed 5,333 tariffs. Guess what? 98% of them never happened.
Okay.
So you kind of go, oh,
Hmm.
if 98% of them never happened, maybe this is a leverage game. And
Okay.
I say game even though it's a very serious thing.
Sure,
Now
sure. I
keep
know what you mean. Yeah.
yeah. So keep in mind, since the beginning of this year, since the beginning of January, not since the inauguration, but the beginning of January, our imports have surged coming
Hmm.
into the country. And when I say surged, I mean by 22.5%, a
Okay.
lot. So
Everybody's trying to get stuff in before
we're
potential tariffs.
we're
Yeah.
bringing things in, and this is narrowing the trade deficit. So our exports minus our imports, that is that deficit that we're
Hmm.
talking about. But our exports also increased. It increased by only 2.5%, but that's still $1.78 billion. We're talking
Wow.
real money here. We're talking
Yeah.
real money. And then our imports were about $326.51 billion so far. And what were we importing? So the big question there is we were importing industrial supplies, about
Hmm.
56% of things,
Okay.
consumer goods, about 24.3%, and then some capital goods, like 18%. So yeah, people were thinking there might be tariffs. We're going to start making some buys.
Okay.
We're going to buy things while they're on sale. If everything is going to go up by 25%, we're definitely going to take advantage of this. But again, going back to President Trump's first term,
Hmm.
of the tariffs he put into place, and again, they were largely focused on steel, aluminum, lumber,
Hmm.
those types of construction materials, President Biden kept them. Not only
Right.
kept them, but raised them.
Yep.
And our tariffs for these particular things went up last May, and then they got delayed, and then they went up for real in September of
Hmm.
last year.
I remember.
Now,
Yep.
here's the big difference. Nobody said anything. Nobody said anything. There was no big megaphone coming from the White House saying, tariffs are going up,
Yeah.
everybody panic, run to the streets, light things on fire. Everybody just kind of went, nobody noticed.
Hmm.
Nobody noticed. And maybe if you were in those industries, you noticed, the price of goods went up by a little bit, but you thought, oh, okay, that's kind of just normal growth. These things happen. But now we have a reason why these are going up. And now we have somebody to point at and go, you're the person who's doing
Right.
this.
Okay.
And we don't like that. So do I think the tariffs and the trade wars are a leveraging tactic? The answer is yes.
Okay.
Do I think we will settle this out with Justin Trudeau and Claudia Sheinbaum in Mexico? I do. But I do think it's really funny that the Ontario premier he decided that he was going to unilaterally slap a 25%
Right.
tariff on everything coming into Ontario from the United States. Um, so the thing there is he's doing nothing but hurting his own people
Yeah.
in that regard, because the things that Ontario brings in from the United States are things that they want. They're not things that they can easily get at a cheaper price anywhere else, and they don't produce those things. So I'm like, okay, you're making a point, and I get that. And this is one of the reasons, Chris, why I'm not in politics. Uh, I don't do very well with all of this machinations and the going back and forth. So on April 2nd is when President Trump says he is going to do some final decisions, and there's going to be this big reveal on April 2nd of who's actually paying tariffs where. What he's doing is he's giving these other leaders a deadline, and that's what's happening. And keep in mind, when you look at the trade deficits that we do have, it's it's with all the people we're familiar with, but it's only 15% of the countries we trade with.
Right.
They just
Yeah.
tend to be the ones everybody trades with. So we're talking China, the EU, Mexico,
Hmm.
Canada, Vietnam, Japan, India, and South Korea and Taiwan,
Yeah. Okay.
the people we normally trade with. So it's 15% of all the people we trade with, we have trade deficits. And people ask me all the time, Mary, is a trade deficit a problem? And the answer is it really isn't. A
Okay.
trade deficit is not a bad thing. A trade deficit means our people are getting things at a lower opportunity cost
Hmm.
than we can produce it them ourselves. And so whenever people say, well, everything I buy is all coming from China, hang on. when we look at US manufacturing has increased in the past 25 years. We have
Yes.
fewer people working in manufacturing, but we're so much better at it than
And I
we
think
were
we're the second
25 years
largest
ago.
manufacturing nation in the world in terms of output behind China, of course, but we are still second. So it is not true that we don't make things here anymore.
We make stuff. We
Yeah.
just don't make. The difference is we'll make one $50,000 item instead of 50,000 items you buy at the dollar store.
Right.
That's the difference. Now, if you want to keep buying the stuff from China, and a lot of our partners in this industry, they're getting those lower priced items, and they're getting them from Indonesia and India and China and Vietnam and Thailand and all that. I would say keep buying them. It's going to be fine. Supply chains have gotten better in the past few years. After COVID, we figured these things out. Shipping companies have merged and done some acquisitions, so we're more efficient than we were, especially during COVID. We're not efficient during COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And when we look at all of the things we're paying attention to,
Mm-hmm.
the tariffs are a negotiating tactic, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
It is a way to equalize part of the political playing field and to get other nations to fall into line to do what President Trump has said he would do in his campaign speaking, which was, I want to secure borders, I want to end the fentanyl crisis, I want fair trade. So if you're putting a tariff on our goods coming from the United States and we're not doing that back on you, then that's not fair trade. So I'm trying to be really reasonable and calm about this, even though I really despise tariffs.
Okay. All right. So much good stuff there. Let me see if I could summarize. You feel that it's essentially the administration's using the tariffs, the levies as leverage, as a negotiating tactic to equalize things a bit. Do you think that in that, and game is the wrong word because we're talking about real things and real people that affect people, but in that game, for lack of a better word, do you see there being repercussions to our economy, or do you actually, or even the other way, do you see it like being beneficial, like, and in what kind of time frame?
So right now, because of the uncertainty, and because again, there's this huge megaphone talking about all these things that keep in mind, most people love ignorance. We do not want to hear these things. We do not want to see how sausage is made. We do not want to know how politics happen. We do not want to know how these things work.
Yep.
Because we're so vocal about these things right now, again, coming from the new administration, it is causing uncertainty. And this is why the stock market is down for this year. S&P, Dow Jones, NASDAQ, it's all down this year. S&P 500 down almost 3% for the year. This does not make people feel good. It does not make people feel confident. The Consumer Confidence Index that came out from University of Michigan this week, down.
Yeah.
The lowest ever. And keep in mind, the lowest ever before this was July of 2022, when we knew we were in a recession and the government kept trying to tell us, no, we weren't. So because of that, and it's not just the consumer price index, it's the confidence metrics that we use. That people are not feeling, and feelings are so hard when you deal with numbers and you go, okay, feelings.
Try to work your way through it.
So hard. I mean, I have feelings, Chris, just not every day. So we try to look very objectively at what's going on, but that's not how people spend. And when you are in charge of a company and you're feeling uncertain about your investments, which they're rocky right now, they will settle out. They will settle out in about 3 months, I think. I personally, I'll share with your folks, I'm using this as a buying opportunity. I'm kind of looking around going, okay, and I'm just dripping stuff right in there. I'm doing that dollar cost averaging thing where I'm just, every week I'm just buying more stuff, because I know in a year, I'm going to be really happy that I bought more stuff now. Not everybody can do that right now. And a lot of people have to go home and tell your spouse, hey, I spent more money in the stock market. Isn't the stock market going down? Isn't that a bad idea? Yeah, but I think in a couple of years, it's going to be good for us. That can be a hard sell. So when your investments are down, whether they're your corporate or personal investments, it doesn't make you feel as though you can take such risky behavior. It doesn't make you feel as though you can invest necessarily in your company. It doesn't make you feel as though you should be hiring more people. What you're going to be seeing, and this is What's happening now is people are pulling back on their expenditures.
Hmm.
So for our people, they may be seeing their customers say, hey, I'm going to delay that order for 4 to 6 months. Hey, I'm going to delay this product. I'm going to delay this promotion. I'm going to delay this thing. So we are definitely, I would be surprised if your people aren't seeing that. The people are
Hmm.
going, hey, hang on. And then for our people, I would say, can we work with them to make this work so that we're not sitting on inventory that we don't want to sit on, that
Okay.
we can continue to produce things that we want our customers to have?
Hmm.
Is there anything we can do to work around these things? Because we've got to make sure that our people stay employed, that we stay in business, that we
Hmm.
stay profitable. And then are there ways that we can reach out to our clients? And this is it's when I was the chief of police,
Hmm.
I would have somebody who had maybe been detained,
Hmm.
and I would go in and I go, so what's going on?
Hmm.
And they would think that I knew everything, which I usually didn't. And they would
Okay.
just start telling me everything because the uncertainty in their head was
Hmm.
so loud in their own head that they
Hmm.
would just start talking and tell me everything.
Okay.
That's what's going on with a lot of our customers. They don't know what's going on. They're nervous. And so it's incumbent upon us to lead our customers.
Mhm.
So my very gentle advice, because you had asked me this question earlier,
Yeah.
what do our ASI people need to be doing? We need to be reaching out to our customers. We need to
Okay.
be picking up the phone and going, hey, Chris, how are things going? It sounds like you've had kind of a rough day, rough week, on a scale of 1 to 10, how are things going for you? Let's reach out to our customers. Let's make sure that we are in the relationship building process, that we are not just transactions, we're not vending machines. We are relationship building. We are focused on their best interests. And we're picking up the phone and saying, hey, there's a lot of crazy stuff going on in the world right now, isn't there? The reality is there's always crazy stuff going on in the
Right.
world. So we
Right.
need to reach out. Our sales teams need to be more active, not less, not in
Hmm.
a salesy way, but
Hmm.
in an efficient, caring for the customer sort of way. We
Okay.
need to be reaching out to our suppliers and saying, hey, what are you seeing? Even though they're not going to have good answers. We don't,
Hmm.
the answer for a lot of people is we just don't know.
Hmm.
So in my mind, that's what we need to do. But I do feel good about where 2025 is going, and here's why. And
Okay.
I'll sum up with that because I know we're getting close.
Yeah.
That this is how a lot of fractional CEOs work. And when you look at President Trump's background, he's kind of treating this like a fractional CEO.
That's
You're the
very
guy who
interesting. Okay.
he's the
Yeah.
guy who comes in, does the slash and burn, and
Hmm.
then you start the rebuilding. So if you look at it from that perspective, you're like, oh, so some of the things, I don't have to like it. I
Hmm.
can see why they might be doing some of the things, even though I don't necessarily like all the things. But if you were a fractional CEO
Hmm.
in that job, you might be doing the same things. So if we take a business overlay and put it over the office of the presidency now,
Hmm.
this might make a little bit more sense.
Okay. So, biggest picture, if as some of this plays out, this bumpy period early on, yeah, but ultimately through this year, do you see things kind of strengthening and coming, things, but I won't even say that it's down, but just like strengthening and being well and maybe normalizing even. Do you see that playing out?
I do, but I think it's going to be a rocky 4 or 5 more months.
Okay. All right.
Mhm.
Very good.
But by
All
the
right.
time
Well,
we get together in October, things will be better. We'll be toasting each other. Everything, people will feel better.
that sounds wonderful. I'm very much looking forward to that time of year and getting through the next few months, as you say. But Dr. Mary Kelly, thank you so much for joining me today. Fantastic insights as always. I can't believe that you could retain that much up there and get it out as eloquently as you do. So thank you for joining us. Yeah.
Chris, thanks so much for having me. It's always such a pleasure to talk to you.